Here's something that stops me cold every time I think about it. We've built the most advanced sleeping systems in human history. Memory foam mattresses, engineered comforters, programmable thermostats humming through the night. Yet most of us sleep colder and more anxiously than people did 200 years ago. Those people slept in drafty cabins with thin walls and a handful of hand-sewn blankets. They had no electricity, no central heating, no Gore-Tex or microfiber anything, and yet they slept warmer. That's not because they were tougher or more stoic. It's because they understood something we've completely lost: how warmth actually works. They didn't sleep warmer because they had more. They slept warmer because they knew how to keep what heat they had. Tonight, we're going to take that knowledge back. For years, we've been sold a simple formula: thicker blankets equal more warmth. Heavier bedding means better insulation. Both ideas sound reasonable until you actually look at the physics or talk to anyone who lived through a real winter without modern heating. Here's the problem with modern comforters. They feel warm at first, but that loft they're designed to trap, it collapses the moment moisture from your body starts accumulating. The very property that made them insulating falls apart. And even if they don't fail, they don't control heat loss. Untucked edges leak warmth. Gaps at your neck let it slip away. But the real culprit? Your mattress. That thick foam or gel layer isn't your friend. It's a thermal sink, pulling heat downward and away from your core like a sponge absorbing water. Most people think they're cold because the room is chilly. They're actually cold because their own bed is stealing their heat. The thermodynamics are unforgiving. Heat doesn't just rise, it escapes downward through the mattress, sideways into open air, and invisibly through moisture evaporating off your skin. A blanket system that doesn't manage all three pathways of heat loss won't keep you warm, no matter how thick it is. This is exactly where historical bedding arrangements excelled. They controlled airflow, moisture, and conductive heat loss with a precision that most modern systems can't touch. They didn't need advanced textiles. They relied on understanding how warmth actually behaves. To understand why the old blanket arrangement worked so well, you have to picture a different world. In 18th and 19th century North America, sleep wasn't a luxury, it was a nightly confrontation with cold that could kill you. Soldiers bunked in wooden barracks where winter air seeped through every crack. Wind whistled across floorboards like the walls weren't even there. Pioneer families slept in cabins with gaps between the logs, snow drifting inside during storms, frost forming on the inside walls before dawn. On farms, people slept on thin straw mattresses under whatever blankets they could weave or repair. What kept them alive wasn't equipment, it was systems thinking. They treated bedding the way they treated clothing or shelter, as a survival tool, not a comfort object. Every layer mattered, every fold served a purpose, every decision was guided by an intimate understanding of cold, heat loss, and limited resources. Historical accounts are full of soldiers wrapping themselves like cocoons to block drafts that cut across the floor, pioneer mothers tucking blankets beneath their children as carefully as they layered them on top, sealing out the icy air circulating freely through their cabins. The pattern is consistent. People who survived harsh winters didn't have more blankets or better equipment. They used what they had with extraordinary precision. This wasn't comfort culture, this was survival logic grounded in physics, not nostalgia. One of the most counterintuitive truths about staying warm is also the most misunderstood. Modern sleepers pile blankets on top of themselves, assuming heat escapes primarily upward. That's why we spend money on thick comforters and oversized quilts. Our ancestors knew better. They understood that the largest drain on body heat isn't the air above you, it's the surface beneath you. They prioritized insulating the bottom first because cold ground, or even a cold wooden floor, pulls warmth from your body relentlessly. This is called ground conduction, and it's ruthless. A mattress, especially a modern foam one, acts like a thermal mass that absorbs heat throughout the night. No matter how many blankets you pile on top, if the bottom is unprotected, the cold wins. That's why traditional bedding always started with a dense wool blanket placed directly under the sleeper. It wasn't decoration, it was a barrier that stopped heat from flowing downward before the mattress could absorb it. Wool's natural crimp and moisture-regulating fibers created a thermal buffer that outperformed any thick comforter placed above. This wasn't a guess, it was a principle observed across cultures. During World War II, military cold weather doctrine made bottom insulation the first priority. Native tribes of the northern plains layered furs or woven mats under their bodies before anything else. Even early polar explorers understood that the ground could kill faster than the air. Here's the most important lesson for modern America. If the power goes out, if heating fails, or if a winter storm traps you inside, your survival depends less on how many blankets you own and more on whether you stop heat from escaping downward. Bottom insulation isn't an accessory, it's the foundation. There's a myth that modern bedding has burned into all of us. Warmth comes from sheer bulk. We see a giant comforter and think its mass must be the secret. Our ancestors knew the real secret. Materials don't keep you warm, air does. Specifically, trapped air, still contained air that can't escape. The old blanket arrangement wasn't about piling on weight, it was about capturing stillness. Thin layers did the work that thick layers fail to accomplish. A wool blanket here, a cotton sheet there, each layer tucked tightly around the edges. These weren't just draped over the body, they formed a sealed perimeter that prevented warm air from drifting out into the night. This concept of dead air pockets, unmoving warmth trapped in place, is one of the oldest and most reliable principles in cold weather survival. You see it in winter climbing systems where multiple thin layers outperform a single bulky jacket. You see it in military sleeping tubes designed for sub-zero nights where trapped air, not fabric thickness, creates life-saving insulation. Compare the two systems side by side and the difference is obvious. A loose comforter might feel cozy at first, but every gap at your shoulders, every untucked corner, every shift during the night leaks warm air continuously. It's more like an open chimney than a heat trap. A tightly layered, well-sealed blanket arrangement creates something else entirely, a microclimate, your personal atmosphere of warmth that stays stable even as the temperature outside drops. It's the stillness of the air within the layers, not their weight, that makes the system work. Our ancestors didn't need expensive fabrics to stay warm. They needed discipline, intention, and the wisdom to use every blanket as part of a unified thermal design. Cold air is one enemy of warmth. Moisture is the silent assassin. People often think they lose heat because the air around them is cold. The real thermal danger during sleep comes from moisture leaving the body. When sweat evaporates from your skin, it steals heat at an alarming rate. No thick blanket can compensate for that loss. This is where wool reveals its genius. Wool does something synthetic materials simply cannot. It continues to insulate even when damp, and it actively pulls moisture away from the skin instead of allowing evaporative cooling to rob you of precious heat. Wool manages moisture before it becomes a problem. Its natural crimp creates tiny air pockets that maintain loft even under humidity. The blanket keeps working long after synthetics have failed. Synthetic fibers, by contrast, trap moisture against your skin. They feel warm when you first get into bed, but as the night goes on, they become cold and clammy. The very material designed to insulate ends up accelerating heat loss. Many Americans experience this every winter without understanding what's happening. We blame the blanket when the real problem is the material. History makes wool's importance crystal clear. Soldiers in freezing trenches relied on wool blankets to survive when synthetics didn't exist. Shepherds slept through harsh mountain nights with nothing but wool cloaks. Sailors on open decks wrapped themselves in wool to resist both cold and spray. Across centuries and continents, wool appears wherever survival in the cold was non-negotiable. Today, we've drifted far from this.
Our dependence on inexpensive polyester and mass-produced synthetic comforters has come at the cost of real thermal performance. Wool is treated like a luxury when it's actually one of the most reliable survival tools humanity has ever developed. The lesson is simple. If you want to sleep warmer, more efficiently, and with greater resilience during blackouts or storms, you need to think about moisture, and wool remains the gold standard for controlling it.
Our ancestors understood something modern sleepers rarely consider. Warmth isn't something you lie beneath, it's something you build around yourself. They didn't just throw a blanket over their bodies and hope for the best. They wrapped, folded, and shaped their bedding with intention, turning loose fabric into a functional heat chamber. They began beneath the body, folding part of a blanket under the lower back or legs, not for softness, but to block downward heat escape. Then they folded another section around the feet, another across the shoulders, sealing the edges so warm air stayed contained. What they were creating wasn't just a blanket arrangement, it was a personal heat envelope, a controlled microclimate warmed entirely by their own body heat. By enclosing themselves in a structured form, they redirected heat toward their core instead of letting it dissipate. The body warmed the small pocket of trapped air, and once sealed, that pocket remained remarkably stable throughout the night. Their warmth didn't come from the blanket, it came from the air the blanket protected. Sound familiar? This is the same principle that defines the modern sleeping bag. But where a sleeping bag relies on manufactured shape, the blanket envelope of earlier centuries relied on skill. A soldier could construct it inside a freezing barracks. A pioneer mother could build it around a child in a drafty cabin. It required no zippers, no synthetic fill, no engineered baffles, only knowledge and practice. Here's what matters. A sleeping bag is a tool. A blanket envelope is a technique. Techniques survive blackouts, storms, resource shortages, and life's simple unpredictability. Tools don't always. Our ancestors weren't at the mercy of their bedding. They mastered it. They shaped it with their hands, sealed it with their bodies, and created warmth through deep understanding of how heat actually behaves. And in doing so, they proved something worth relearning. You don't need more insulation, you need a better system. Here's another truth modern marketing has buried. Uniformity is the enemy of warmth. Today's bedding industry insists everything should match: coordinated sets, uniform texture, single aesthetic. Warmth doesn't care about aesthetics, it's a science, and science shows that mixed materials create far more effective insulation than any uniform modern ensemble. Our ancestors approached bedding like a skilled craftsman approaches tools. Every material served a purpose. No blanket existed in isolation. Cotton provided comfort next to the skin and helped manage surface moisture. Wool added insulation through its crimped fibers and natural loft. A quilt on top offered weight and stability, pressing the layers beneath into a tighter seal and preventing gaps that leaked heat. Together, these formed a thermal ecosystem, a cooperative system where each material strengthened the others. Cotton managed moisture before it became a problem. Wool trapped air, even in damp conditions. The quilts kept everything in place, ensuring the microclimate remained undisturbed. Modern bedding sets flip this logic. They prioritize appearance over performance, usually relying on a single synthetic material designed to do everything, yet doing nothing particularly well. The idea that one blanket can manage temperature, moisture, insulation, airflow, and comfort simultaneously isn't science, it's marketing. Our ancestors weren't swayed by branding or uniformity. They used whatever combination of materials delivered results. A wool army surplus blanket paired with a worn cotton sheet, a handmade quilt layered over both. Nothing matched. Everything worked. Their focus was on efficiency and the simple, undeniable power of diversity. The lesson for us: don't search for the perfect product, build the perfect system. Warmth comes from synergy, not uniformity, and the old mixed material approach continues to outperform many modern setups, especially when the power goes out and the room grows cold. What makes the old blanket arrangement extraordinary isn't that it once worked, it's that it still works, now perhaps more than ever.
This knowledge was never meant only for survivalists or hardy outdoorsmen. It was meant for anyone facing winter's realities, and those realities are more unpredictable than many Americans want to admit. Power outages aren't rare anymore. Winter storms knock out heating grids, ice collapses transformers, rural areas experience long delays in emergency response. Millions of Americans, especially the elderly, live in homes that lose heat far faster than they realize. In these moments, your bed stops being a place of rest. It becomes a passive shelter that has to keep you alive through hours of cold when electricity can't. This is where ancient logic surpasses modern convenience. A $300 synthetic comforter might feel luxurious, but it often fails the moment moisture builds or the room temperature drops. A $40 wool blanket properly layered beneath and around you outperforms it in nearly every measurable way. It traps air, it manages moisture, it resists the collapse of insulation, and most importantly, it works without power, without preparation, without technology. Warmth in this sense isn't a commodity, it's resilience. A well-constructed bedding system acts like a miniature shelter, retaining heat even as the house grows cold around it. For older adults whose bodies shed heat faster and recover warmth more slowly, this can be the difference between discomfort and danger. There's quiet empowerment in realizing your bed can be more than furniture. It can be an instrument of survival, one that costs little but protects much. Our ancestors didn't wait for perfect conditions. They built systems that worked under the worst of them. That mindset is exactly what America needs today.
If these principles are so effective, why did we stop using them? The answer isn't mysterious, it's cultural. When central heating entered American homes, it fundamentally changed our relationship with cold. We no longer had to understand heat loss mechanics. We didn't have to seal drafts, manage moisture, or shape blankets intentionally. Comfort became automated, and with automation came forgetting. Marketing accelerated the decline. Bedding companies promised warmth through thickness, softness, and coordinated sets. They sold appearance over physics, convenience over technique. Slowly, the old skills, passed down through soldiers, farmers, sailors, and pioneers, faded from active memory. But here's the thing, the knowledge didn't die, it was forgotten. It lived quietly in old journals, frontier diaries, military manuals, and the practices of people who understood that warmth came from wisdom, not luxury. Our ancestors didn't romanticize hardship, they optimized survival. They designed bedding systems the same way they designed their shelters, with purpose, discipline, and respect for winter's realities. Today, as energy insecurity rises and weather grows more extreme, reclaiming this knowledge isn't nostalgia, it's necessity. Staying warm isn't about buying the right product, it's about understanding how insulation, air, and moisture work together. Modern bedding has taught us to chase comfort through consumption. History teaches us to create comfort through comprehension. Our ancestors didn't sleep warmer because they had more. They slept warmer because they understood how to use what they had. Their materials were simple, their tools were humble, but their mastery of warmth was profound. You can reclaim it tonight. Add a wool layer beneath you. Seal the sides. Build your own heat envelope. Create the microclimate your body needs, not the one marketing tells you to buy. Because when the storms come, when the power fails, when the night grows colder than expected, it won't be technology that saves you. It will be knowledge. Knowledge as old as humanity and as relevant as today. Try these methods tonight. Feel the difference. Keep alive the techniques that kept entire generations warm through winters far harsher than ours. Stay warm, stay wise,